But we don't have a bumper, so I'll just say good morning. How are we doing today? Great to be with you guys. We're in week 5. It's hard to believe. Week 5 of the Them versus Us series. So thank you for being a part of this. I know a number of you have gone online if you were traveling or missed a few of them and have told me that. So it's cool to be a part of this series with you. To those who are watching or listening online, shout out to you guys as well. So glad that you are a part of it. Today, we are concluding Week 5, Them versus Us. If you got your Bibles, I would encourage you to get those out. We're going to be in Genesis chapter 4. This is an easy one if you're like, oh, I don't want to, look silly. I don't know where this is. Go all the way to the beginning. Genesis is the first book. Get to chapter 4. Just hold your spot there. If you got a Bible app on a device, you can get that out as well. Just scroll to the top, and you're going to see Genesis there. And I'd love for you to read along for yourself. Now, we're going to continue this last idea that we've been looking at each and every week, that we are quick to create a them, but God creates an us. You and I are so good at creating thems. All around us, there's thems for all sorts of reasons. God is inviting us into something bigger. Now, you might have wondered throughout this series, like, why is it so hard for us? Why is it so hard for us to get along? Why are there thems? Why isn't there just one, collective us? Why do we have to keep addressing themes like this? The reality is when we get together, we have all kinds of issues. Now, I was reading this week, they have these websites devoted to conversations that are overheard, right? So someone will be listening in, they'll hear someone else say something, they'll think that's funny, they'll write it down, submit it to these websites. And so I was reading this one website this week, and I think this was all like conversations in New York that people overheard other people saying. And a few of them I just thought were humorous of like, oh, this is why we have issues getting along together. Someone said, OMG, you have lost so much weight since I last saw you. You look incredible. The person said, I was 8 months pregnant. Like, you can imagine that's going to be an awkward, coffee visit or lunch or whatever that was. Like, that's a weird way to begin it. Someone was overheard saying, I want a relationship just to say I'm in one, but I really don't want to have to talk to another person. Okay, you want that, status update, but you don't really want the engagement. That's going to be possibly a rough relationship, if you're in a relationship with that person. Or my favorite, I saw a man sitting in Starbucks, no phone, no iPad, no laptop, just sitting there drinking coffee like a psychopath. I love that. What are you doing, sir? Like, you need to be doing something. You don't just enjoy coffee anymore, right? And we have all these things. We're strange as individuals. Then you get us together, and all these things play out. Now, if you go to the very beginning of Genesis 4, beginning of the Bible, does not take long before you see our interactions as humans go bad. And in fact, you have the first sibling rivalry already in the text. So if you have a lot of siblings, you may relate. If you are raising kids and they want to fight, you're going to relate. This one goes really bad. And immediately, like this story about humanity does not play out well, and we realize something is fundamentally at odds with us. So Genesis chapter 4, if you got your Bible, we're going to read in verse 3. It says, when it was time for the harvest, Cain presented some of his crops as a gift to the Lord. So he's a farmer. So he's coming in, bringing these plants to God. Abel is his brother, also brought a gift, the best portions of the firstborn lambs from his flock. So he's a shepherd. He's got these lambs, and he's bringing them. And Cain, his brother, is bringing his harvest, and they both bring these gifts. The Lord accepted Abel and his gift, but he did not accept Cain and his gift. Now, lots of speculation here. People have written books and books and books on this. We don't know a lot of details here. We don't know what was wrong with Cain's, and we can infer some things. We can, kind of put context clues together. Not a lot is said here other than Cain's gift was different than Abel's gift, and God responded accordingly. Now, this made Cain very angry, and he looked dejected. Why are you so angry, the Lord asked Cain. Why do you look so dejected? You'll be accepted if you do what is right. But if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you, but you must subdue it and be its master. So again, you're going, why is sin coming into this? There's something going on with Cain's gift to God. We don't know what it is, but there's a lot more to that story. God's going, look, if you do things the right way, I'll respond differently. Don't, give me gifts the way you gave this one. Now you think Cain go, okay, got it, check, I'll learn from this. No, Cain's like, I'm not going to learn from this. I'm going to go vent my frustration. Verse 8, one day, Cain suggested to his brother, let's go out into the fields. And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Afterward, the Lord asked Cain, where is your brother? Where is Abel? I don't know, Cain responded. Am I my brother's guardian? But the Lord said, what have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. So this is a profound story with profound implications for you and I today when we consider this. Now, I want you to notice Cain's reaction here. When God's like, where is Abel? Now, does God not know where Abel is? Like, no, he's aware. But God is trying to get Cain to feel some responsibility over this relationship, over his brother. Like, feel something. Where is your brother? And notice Cain's question. Most versions say it like this. Am I my brother's keeper? Cain fires a question right back at God. Why are you asking me? Why do you think I should owe you an explanation to where Abel is? I don't know where Abel is. Why are you asking me? Do I have some responsibility to keep track of him, to keep tabs on him? Am I my brother's keeper? If you have the Message paraphrase, I love the way it says it. Am I his babysitter? Like, can't you just imagine the tone of that? Like, yo, God, why are you asking me? Go find Abel for yourself. Why do I have to give you an account for this? It makes us wonder, what is the responsibility that you and I have to other people? And oftentimes we think, okay, well, if I know someone really well, then yes, I have a responsibility to them. But sometimes you'll be in a situation and you don't know, right? I remember one time I was flying on an airplane. I guess where else would you be when you're flying? But I was flying, and I was sitting on the aisle, and so there's this couple next to me, and I don't know, they were together. I don't know if they're married, dating, what the deal was. But at one point, the guy isn't looking so good. And I'm kind of like, hey, is everything fine? And, his girl is like, yeah, he's not feeling great. And I'm like, okay, yeah, like he really doesn't look good. And so, I'm just kind of keeping tabs on this. And at one point, she says to me, hey, could he use the bathroom? He's just like really not feeling good. I'm like, yeah, no problem. So I get up, and I kind of take a step back into the aisle. He stands up, he goes into the aisle, and as soon as he kind of turns to go forward, just falls down on his face. And I'm standing there, and I'm like, oh no, like, what do I do here? Now, I don't know anything medical, anything, right? So I'm like, I don't know how to help this guy, but I just got out of my seat and he just passed out right in front of me. And so thankfully on an airplane, lots of people, and immediately everyone starts kicking into, motion, flight attendants, there's like undercover doctors coming out of everywhere, everyone's trying to help this person. And so I just kind of like, all right, take a step back so everybody can get in. They're all trying to help this guy on the ground. And meanwhile, like a flight attendant comes up to me, she's like, sir, I need you to go back to your seat. I'm like, yeah, like my seat's over there, like right in the middle of all this. Like I'm on the aisle, and so I'm like, I can't get back to my seat. She's like, oh, okay. And so I'm like standing there, awkwardly just wondering, like, what do I do? Here's the weirdest part of that. At one point, this was taking a while, the girl comes up to me and apologized to me. Like, I am so sorry that, you can't sit in your seat right now. I'm literally thinking, your husband, boyfriend, whoever is passed out on the ground. Like, you don't need to worry about me right now. Like, I'm grateful, but like this is not the biggest issue. And we find these kind of situations all the time where it's like, what, whose responsibility is it? How much do I owe the person, or how can I help? And we have this all the time. Now think about it this way. I want you to think about who you physically live around, okay? Not your family, but who lives near you. A neighbor, right? And this can be a house next to you, an apartment next to you, someone who lives near you. How much do you know about that person? Now, just pick one, okay? So pick a neighbor, pick the neighbor you know the best. If I were to say to you right now, hey, how's that neighbor's family life going? Would you know the answer to that? If I said, hey, how's their job going? Would you know the answer to that? Was it, hey, what are some things that they're really working on, hoping that happen this year? Would you be able to answer that? Like, how many questions could I ask you about that neighbor that you would be able to have an answer for? Or at what point would you go, I don't know? And at what point would you get annoyed? Like, why are you asking me this? They're my neighbor. Why would I know that, right? Because we go, no, I don't need to know that. They're my neighbors. I'll tell you the truth. I don't know much about my neighbors. I've tried. They're not real interested in that. And it's tricky. So it's like, how do I get to know someone who doesn't really want to be known, right? And this is kind of how life works. But we wonder, like, do I have some responsibility? Am I my brother's keeper? What role do I have when it comes to the people around us? Now, I want you to notice what God says to Cain, because this teaches us volumes about who God is. Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now, this is important because this is the first murder we have in the scriptures, right? And so oftentimes when we think when something bad happens, when there is an injustice, we have to make it right. Now, that's called revenge, right? Like something's wrong, we're going to go make it right. But what you realize is long before anyone else can do anything, that what has happened is already crying out to God. I love the imagery here. Your brother's blood is crying out. You go, well, Abel's dead. But his blood is metaphorically crying out to God from the soil. So when God says, where is Abel? He's saying that in reaction to your brother's blood is crying out to me. Which shows us today, like any unjust loss of life is an affront to God long before it's an affront to you and I. Like God is intimately involved. But then God is going to put us involved in this. Like, hey, what role do you have? And so God says to him, do you not realize how connected I am to what you have done to your brother? And so you go, okay, so if we were to kill someone, that would clearly be in violation. Like God is going to say, like that is going to cry out. But how far does that go? Now, again, most of us probably, hopefully, haven't killed anyone. So you're going, okay, check there. I don't relate with Cain. Great. Have you ever neglected to help someone? Yeah, probably most of us would have something come to mind like I could have helped someone and I didn't, or I could have done more than I did. Okay, well, does that cry out to God when we neglect others? Like how far would we take this logic? How much of what we do or do not do to the people around us cries out to God? Now, what you realize is it starts to get into how are we viewing the world? How do we view how we exist in the world? And so I've saved this topic for last, because I think this kind of takes a step back and zooms everything out and goes, okay, if we understand the tendency we have to create of them, and we go, okay, I don't want to do that. We spent 4 weeks on that. Then we say, what's a better way to do instead? You begin to see a progression. Now, when we're born, we start with this premise. I belong to me. This is what kids, you have to teach them, right? And so when a kid hits someone else, what do you say? Your hands are to yourself. Keep them to yourself, right? Like, these are your hands. They don't go on your sibling. They don't go on anybody else. You're teaching a child, you belong to you, right? Like control you. And you teach them, hey, no one has a right to do anything to your body. You belong to you. These are all things we teach children, and this is a basic level of understanding. Here's the problem. If you never get beyond this as an adult, you are stunted. You are never going to exist in community in a healthy way with other people. If all you are focused on is, I belong to me, great. But that is a very narrow way to see the world. And there are plenty of adults who never outgrew this. And you go, yeah, I know a few of them. Some of you are like elbowing someone next to you right now, right? Like, I belong to me, like this is a problem. So you go, okay, start there, but keep going. Develop into something bigger. Well, what's beyond that? I would say the next one is, I belong to you. So I start with, I belong to me, and this is what happens when you fall in love, right? And think of all the sappy Taylor Swift songs about, all the language of like, oh, I belong to you and you belong to me. And this is how we talk about relationships, right? So it's not just me and like who I am, it's me and you. And you belong to me, and I belong to you. And we somehow enter into this beautiful, commitment to one another, and now there's something bigger. And you go, yeah, that's really cool. And that could be described as like, that's love. Now, again, it's not just romantic love, but you have that whenever you have that kind of a connection with someone else. You can think of this in family terms. I belong to the other members of my family, right? And so you have, it's not just me, there's someone else. But again, if you stop there, you're going to get stunted. Now, I would say the next step is really where you begin to enter into what is Christianity 101. I would describe it like this. You transition to, I belong to me, I belong to you, I belong to God. Now, all of a sudden, I'm looking bigger than just me. I'm looking bigger than just you and me. And now I'm thinking, oh, there's actually God, and I have some type of interaction with God. And so at a basic level, you could say this is kind of like Christianity. Like, hey, how do I learn that I belong to something greater than me, greater than you, that there is something bigger, all right? And so then we start to think like, okay, if I belong to God, how do I start to make sense of the world? How do I start to figure out what God is asking of me? All of those come from this third phase. But I would say, sadly, most Christians just stop there. I belong to God. If you've ever heard us, talk about spirituality, saying I'll pick on pastors, we often talk about it's just, you and God. Like, you just need to focus on you and God. Now, there's a place for that, and again, in the progression, sure. But if all you're worried about, if all Christianity is to you is you and God, you're going to have a hard time in community. You're going to have a hard time with other people because you're stuck here. I belong to God. It's me and God. All I got to worry about is me and God. That's great, but there's something bigger. I suggest the fourth stage of development. I belong to me, I belong to you, I belong to God, and then you add, we belong to God. So now I'm acknowledging I belong to God, but there's also you. And not just you and me, but you belong to God too. And now I've zoomed out, and there's a collective sense of all of us. We belong to God. Therefore, we are all together in this. And if we belong to God, this changes the way we think. It changes the way we interact with the people around us. The author David Brooks has said it like this. The critical question is not who am I, but whose am I? Now, you can make that plural for our purposes. Who are we? But whose are we? Oh, we belong to God. And this is how you get the healthiest expression of the church. When you begin to look around and go, we belong to God. How do we figure out how to exist like this? And when you think about that, you begin to see the world, you begin to see people very differently. So how did it start? It started with Cain and Abel, this sense of why would you expect anything from me? That's how this easily starts. But now I want to show you how it's going, as we've seen each week. I want to show you that Jesus answers Cain's question. So Cain's question, look, am I Abel's babysitter? Do I have to give you an account for what's going on with Abel? And Jesus goes, okay, let me tell you how you should care about other people. This is in Luke chapter 15. Check out a story that Jesus told. I think this is an amazing way to answer Cain's question. So Jesus told them this story. If a man has 100 sheep and one of them gets lost, what will he do? Okay, he was just going to let the one go, right? And he says, no, won't he leave the 99 others in the wilderness and go to search for the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he will joyfully carry it home on his shoulders. When he arrives, he will call together his friends and his neighbors, saying, rejoice with me, because I have found my lost sheep. In the same way, there is more joy in heaven over one lost sinner who repents and returns to God than over 99 others who are righteous and haven't strayed away. This is one of those passages where if you have been a Christian for a long time, if you have grown up in the church, you look at this and you go, yeah, love it. Beautiful. Love the imagery here, Jesus. We often incorporate this kind of wording into songs that we think, oh, this is amazing. If you're new to Christianity, or you're on the edge, or you're just kind of checking this thing out, you may look at that and go, that's illogical. Right? That's illogical. Why would you risk 99 sheep to go get the one that's wandered off? And if you're going to be honest, isn't it always the same one that wanders off? Right? It's always the same one, right? So you're going to risk the 99, the health of the 99, to go and try to get this one back? How would the 99 feel about that? Like, we have this idea, and if you're in the church culture, you go, oh yeah, Jesus, I love it. If you actually try to treat people like this, if you actually try to apply this, bad things happen. You know how I know that? I was the lead pastor for a number of years. And if I think back to like the times I got in most trouble with people, is if I try to say to the 99, hey, you're doing great. Everything's great. Sit here for a moment. I'm going to go over here, and we're going to do something to try to reach this person who isn't even here yet. You know what I found out? If you apply this in a church setting, you know what the 99 will do? The 99 will send you emails. Lots of them. They will write to you, "Oh, pastor, let me tell you, you took this away from us and we like it." Or, "You know what? I used to have this and now I don't." Or, "I used to love this and now I can't do it because you changed it." And I would always sit with people and I would say, "Hey, let me cast a vision for you, what we're trying to do. See, there's this person out here that isn't a part of our community yet." And sometimes, here's what I realized. Sometimes people will go, "Oh, it's like that 99 thing." Yeah, it's like the 99 thing. And I would ask them, "Would you be willing to be a contented part of the 99 and partner with us to join together to reach that one?" And sometimes people would go, "Oh, I get it now, totally." But you know, there were other times people said, "No. Why do I literally get this, why do I have to sacrifice for someone who isn't even here?" And I would be like, "Well, because that's the point. Like, we don't just exist for us, right? Like, we exist for them, but, well, they're not even here yet. So why are you going to make changes for them? Why are you deciding things for them?" And I realized, like, oh, this is a fun verse to read until you try to live it out. This is dicey stuff. But Jesus is saying, look, you want to know how we interact with other people? This is how we treat other people. We sacrifice everything. We put everything else at risk to go and reach that person. That's how far we go. So go, "Okay, am I my brother's keeper?" Oh, yeah, you are. Am I responsible for the people around me? Oh, not are you just responsible, you are illogically responsible. You're going, whoa, I wasn't ready for that. Like, I want to have, plausible deniability. I want to be able to say, "No, look, you can't expect that of me." Jesus going, no, you are illogically responsible. So when it comes to the people around you, you're responsible for your brother, for your sister, for your neighbor, for the strangers around you, for the strangers far away from you. You're responsible for all of it, and so am I. And if you begin to realize, oh, we belong to God, it will cause you to see the world completely different, and it will cause you to be fully human. This is how God has designed us. Now, our default way of thinking about this, we ask this question: what is best for me? Now, if you notice, this is a "I belong to me" type way of thinking, but this is how most adults get stuck. When it comes to, things that we complain about. Why are we complaining about something? Because what is best for me was broken. Like, this is not what's best for me, so I'm going to let you know about it, right? This is what's best for me, and this didn't happen, so now I'm going to go make it best for me. And the problem with this way of thinking, it's very common, but it fundamentally will turn everyone around you into a them. Because other people will hamper what's best for you. They will make it hard. Because you're going to go, "Well, if you get what you need, then there's less of that for me. That's not what's best for me." So now you are a direct competition to me. You are a challenge to me. And it gives you this lens where you start looking at everyone else. You are potentially people that will keep me from experiencing what is best for me. And so what we do is we start to protect ourselves from this. I'm not going to let anybody do that. And we start joining up with other people in order to ensure that what is best for me is what's going to happen. They've even coined a term for this. They call them anti-tribes, if you've heard this. Anti-tribes. What is that? Well, a tribe is when a group of people come together around a shared cause or a shared commitment to something or something we have in common, right? Like, we all love to ride bikes. Let's create a bike tribe, right? Like, awesome. That's how tribes work. Anti-tribes are the opposite. We are all against this thing. Let's unite together against it. And this has become so common. This is how most of our politics are now, right? They are anti-tribes. It's not what we're for anymore. It's what we're against. We go, "Are you against that too? Awesome, let's be buddies." And we start to find people who are against the very same things that we are against. Now, if you put this in spiritual terms, would there ever be a situation where God would call you to support an anti-tribe? Sure. I think God might want you to fight against injustice or fight against oppression, right? There are plenty of moments I would say, yeah. But here's the challenge. If our Christianity becomes fundamentally an anti-tribe, we will lose the ability to love our enemies. If our version of Christianity is, we are Christians because we are against X, Y, and Z. And guess what? If you poll people who are not Christian and go, hey, what do you think about Christians? Their first answer is all the things we're against. It's an anti-tribe. If Christianity becomes an anti-tribe, if that is our shared identity, we will never be able to love our enemies. Now, let me ask this question. What if we spent more time creating something good than fighting something bad? Acknowledging there may be times you need to fight something bad. There is sin, there is evil in the world, sure. And we need to oppose that in the ways that Jesus has allowed us to oppose it. But if we spend all our time on that, we're an anti-tribe. If your version of Christianity is just going around telling everyone else all the things they can't do, all the things they have to be against, you're a part of an anti-tribe. But what if we said, you know what, let's create something beautiful. Let's build something beautiful. Let's offer the world something that the world doesn't already have. And in doing that, we will naturally fight against all other things, but we're going to do that not by just combating them. We're going to do that by creating something beautiful and inviting people to experience that. And if you start to think like that, you change to this question. What is best for all of us? Not what is best for me. What is best for all of us? This is a dangerous question to ask. Because if you start to really live life this way, what is best for all of us? You start to look around you. And if someone around you needs something, whatever it is, you go, oh, it would be best for them if they had this. Oh, I have that. I could give that to them, and that would be best for them, and that leads us to what's best for all of us. Right? You start to look around you differently. You start to see. And guess what? This is what you see in the book of Acts, the early church. That's how they treated one another. They were like selling stuff and giving stuff away and figuring out, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? And they just organically did this. This is the kind of community that the church would thrive in if we started saying, what is best for all of us? And then we look around. We just say, hey, what is it you need? What is it you need? How can I help? And if all of us are doing that for each other, all of us are elevated together as a community. To use the language of Genesis 4, what does it look like for me to be the keeper of others? This is how we not just decide I'm not going to create a them, we decide I'm going to proactively do something beautiful. What does it look like for me to be the keeper of others? If we woke up every day and asked this question, all right, God, today, what does it look like for me to be the keeper of others? And then you just open your eyes in interactions with people. Hey, what is it someone needs? Oh, that person looks like something's off. Or, hey, they look like they're having a hard day. Or what you just start to see, what would it mean if I were a keeper of others? It's a radically different way of Christianity, rather than let's define Christianity by all the limits, by all the people who don't fit, who don't belong. That's a very different kind of Christianity. The author, Rachel Held Evans, beautifully put it like this. The gospel doesn't need a coalition devoted to keeping the wrong people out. Let's just stop there. No show of hands, just rhetorically. How many of us have seen churches that is their only goal? We're going to keep the wrong kind of people out, right? It's just, no, the gospel doesn't need that. It needs a family of sinners saved by grace, committed to tearing down the walls, throwing open the doors, and shouting, welcome. There's bread and wine. Come eat with us and talk. This isn't a kingdom for the worthy. It's a kingdom for the hungry. The gospel is not, are you good enough? Did you cross the line to become an us? Have you checked all the boxes? That is them versus us thinking. The gospel is, I'm hungry. You're hungry too. Let's eat together. Let's share everything together. Let's be in this together so that all of us can thrive. And how wide does that go? There is no boundary to that. That every single person we see, come on in. Well, you're invited to be a part of this. You're invited to be a part of this. Well, I don't believe that. It's okay, you're invited to be a part of this. I don't do that. It's okay, you're invited to be a part of this. I don't know how I feel about that. It's okay, you're invited to be a part of this. I mean, you just keep inviting. You invite, and we broaden. And this is the gospel. This is what the church is when the church is at its best. It is that environment that just keeps welcoming more and more people. I want to close with an illustration I read in a book. The book is one of the most brilliant titles I've ever read. Sorry I'm late, I didn't want to come. Love this title. It's written by Jessica Pan, and she's an introvert. And so she spent, I think a year doing extroverted things and talking to extroverts about all right, you who are just naturally great with people and weird social situations, how do you do it? And then she wrote this whole book about all the things that she learned. Now, I'm an introvert, so I read this and I was like, that's fascinating. Extroverts are weird people. I mean, I don't understand how your brains work. So I read this and I was really fascinated by it. She tells a story about her friend Nick in this book. And this story is so moving, and I read it and I was like, there is so much of life in this one story. I want to close with this story because I think this is so profound. So this is her relaying a story her friend Nick told her, and this is, again, I think Nick's an extrovert, explaining something he learned about how the world works. It says, a few years ago, I was driving through a remote part of Ethiopia, and I kept passing all these mothers and children outside of their mud huts. Everybody I passed stared at me like I was dead. Totally blank facial expressions. It was the most uncomfortable I'd ever been in my life. But then it occurred to me, while I was sitting there, I was looking at them in exactly the same way they're looking at me. So I started smiling and waving as I went by, and it was like I flipped a switch. As soon as I started smiling, waving, and looking friendly, they started waving from their windows, grinning at me, and running out of their houses to give me high fives. And then he drops this line. That's the truth of the world. Nobody waves, but everybody waves back. Nobody waves, but everybody waves back. I love to take walks, and there's a path right by my house. And whenever I get on these walks, oftentimes I'll walk by other people. And I'm amazed. If I don't do anything, I could go an entire walk, miles of it, past dozens of people, and never make eye contact, never exchange a smile, never say anything. We could all just be in our headphones, in our own worlds, walk by like we don't exist. And I have just made it a point. I'm going to be the guy that smiles, that tries to look them in the eye, get them to look me in the eye, and says good morning. And the majority of the time, I feel silly because they won't respond, or they don't do it back, or they go out of their way to avoid eye contact. But you can tell when someone is genuinely surprised, like, oh, wow, here's another human engaging me, and you can watch their countenance change immediately. Like, here I am in a walk, I'm on my own, in my head, in my zone, and all of a sudden, this person now is inviting me just to be friendly, just a moment, a friendly exchange. This is what it looks like to be our brother's keeper. Rather than saying, okay, Jesus, yeah, we get it, we'll try to stop creating thems, we say, you know what? We're going to be the ones that wave. We'll start it. You know the worst thing that can happen to you if you wave to someone that looks maybe not friendly? They don't wave back. That's the worst thing that can happen to you. You know the worst thing that happens to me on a walk when I say good morning and no one replies? That's it. They just keep walking. I'll probably never see them again in my life. That's the worst case scenario. And yet we are so afraid of, well, I'll wave if they wave. No. Nobody waves, but everybody waves back. What if we were the ones that said we started? Because of what we've experienced with Jesus, we are going to start the us. We're going to create the us. We're going to be the one to walk across those lines that get drawn. We're going to be the ones to go into enemy territory, right? Those people. We're going to be the ones to go invite them in to what we're doing. It's in a totally different way. What would God do with a church like that? With a community of people decided, you know what? We are our brother's keeper. We are. So we're going to wave. We're going to be the one to start it. And we'll invite everybody to experience what we have experienced. I think it would literally completely change our communities, our relationships, the way we see the world, the way we see ourselves, all from something so simple, a commitment to say, hey, we belong to God, And I want you to be a part of this. Let's pray together. Jesus, would you use us to start the wave? To start this sense of engagement? Would you just nudge us today when we interact with people around us that we may think we have no obligation to them? But would you show us that we do all belong to you? And we can talk about a them and an us, and we can commit ourselves to trying to not create thems. But when we see that ultimately we can be a part of creating something beautiful. So may you use us to walk across the aisle, to go across the street, to cross those real or imagined lines, and invite others to experience what we've experienced. As you continue to transform broken people like us, would you use us to offer hope to the world, offer healing to the world? Would you give us eyes to see people the way you see them? Would you open our eyes to opportunities we're going to have today and this week